government is taking some action to ensure that Nigerians have some relief in terms of the availability of food on the table. Of course, this meeting is not by itself exhaustive. It's just like I said at the beginning, it's going to continue tomorrow and the day after. Now, some of these will involve unlocking the foods that are available in most of the storage facilities around the country. You know that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has some food reserve that is going to be made available to Nigerians. Government is also talking to major millers and major commodity traders to also see what is available in their stores, to open it up so that government will provide some intervention, discuss with them, and provide some intervention to make this food available to Nigerians. What government is noticing is that actually there is still food in this country. Some people are taking advantage of the situation, especially because of the high cost, the rise in or the depreciation in the value of our currency. That has led to
All right, we have there the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, giving a report on the meeting held with regards to food shortage.
Okay, so I'll start with the President is back after his private visit. I hope we reduce such private visits, because if you're accountable to the people, you need to be able to tell the people about your whereabouts. But for his supporters, Daddy, Oyoyo, Daddy, Oyoyo, Kileba Mubo. But while he was away, a lot of problems happened. Insecurity, kidnapping, I can go on and about that. But what is most pertinent is about food. And the question is, how can we stop this? Food inflation has been going on for a while now. So that's why this meeting, to me, is very hypocritical. But for the sake of the supporters of this administration, they'll say, oh, praise them when they do something. Oh, I praise them for the meeting. But it's hypocritical, and I'll tell you why. It is not today food inflation had been rising by the statistical figures. So if it took a protest for you to have a meeting, is it that you were not checking the facts in the first place? But for those that want praise, I give it to them. Kudos on this meeting. Let's now come down to food. What are the major problems we are facing? Some people were saying in the meeting, oh, there's no food shortage and all of that. As at last year, we were ranked serious on the global hunger index. The hunger in Nigeria is serious, over 28.3% on the ranking table. Also, consistently, we've had an increasing number of people that are food insecure. The number rose from 17 million to about 25 million. Consistently, insecurity has stopped people from planting in all those planting belts in the country. People cannot cultivate. Mango and bokos that we talk about so much, that they were killings, are areas that they would normally plant potatoes and the likes. But I think the most important problem we're not looking at is even the situation with our silos. How do we even store the food we have? Government said to have about 33 silos in this country. In 2006, they claimed they were going to build 1 million mini silos for farmers. Today, we have not seen anything. Those 33 silos, only a couple of years ago, they said they were going to concession some of them and be making 6 billion annually. What have we made for the concession? So when we say we want to release strategic grain reserve, we've had stories dating back to 2016 that was talking about how empty those silos are. Those silos are supposed to have a capacity of about 1.3 million metric tons of grains. What capacity of metric tons of grain do we have in the strategic grain reserve? Those are the questions we should start by asking. What's the viability of our strategic grain reserve in the country? I know the private sector have some, they'll be able to concession some from the government. How is the viability of that? Is it from the private sector you want to take? Secondly, what's the food plan for this administration? They talked about cultivating 150,000 hectares as palliative during COVID last year. If we had cultivated at that time, are we not supposed to have a first food cycle now? So what's going on? What is the strategic plan to be able to nip in the bud the problem of post-harvest losses? Also, pre-harvest losses. What is the food sustainability plan per crop in the country? In the 60s, Nigeria used to produce 1/3 of the tomato eaten in the West African sub-region, but today we have difficulties with tomato and onion and the likes. So these are the real conversations I feel we should bring to the table as regards this food plan, because it needs a holistic looking at.
All right, Dr. Lati.
Okay. One of the first things that President TINUBU did when he assumed office was to declare a state of emergency on food insecurity. That was July 2023. He not only declared a state of emergency on food insecurity, having realized that that was a problem, he moved the committee that is set up to the National Security Council. In other words, it became the responsibility of the National Security Council of Nigeria to worry about food, which makes sense because insecurity, is directly linked to whether or not the people can feed themselves. And the question that we ask is that what has that emergency committee been doing since July 2023? It is only when there is a problem, when a problem reaches a turning point, a boiling point in Nigeria, that you suddenly have people holding meetings. They hold meetings, they will talk shop, and they will go away and assume that the problem will disappear. But the problem does not disappear on its own. Hence, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics in December 2023 announced, and that's government official figure, that inflation in Nigeria was already 33.3%. So it's not as if it's something that somebody is making up. It's something that is very clear. Now, the World Bank, in its World Food Security Report, which is the latest report, has reported that 7 states in northwest and north central of Nigeria, northwest and northeast of Nigeria, are facing the crisis of food insecurity, and that the situation is likely to worsen in 2024. Yobe, Zamfara are some of the states that are mentioned in that report. And therefore, it is not surprising that we have seen protests in Niger State this week. We have seen protests in Kano this week. We have seen protests over the rising cost of living in Nigeria, in Rivers State, in Port Harcourt, and also in Oyo State. What is established is that the government is not in a position to say that, it is the opposition that is raising an alarm about food insecurity, that there is food in the country. Well, if there is food in the country, people will eat. After all, many years ago in this country, one federal minister said there was no problem because people were not yet eating from dustbins. The reality in Nigeria today is that people are already eating from dustbins. If you look very well, if you don't have eyesight problems, because some people have eyes and they can't see, you will see people picking, food items from garbage dumps across cities in Nigeria. So the argument about the opposition organizing protests cannot stand. The second point, therefore, deriving from that, is that government should not politicize food issue. It's not a matter for politics. It's a matter of security, as President TINUBU himself identified. So yesterday, there was a meeting that was chaired by the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, attended by ministers, including Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, CBN Governor, Ministers of Agriculture, both substantive and state, all deliberating against the background of protest. It had to take a protest on the streets of Mina and a protest of Kano for that committee to remember that they should meet. Okay, we don't know the full outcomes yet of that meeting, but what we know is that government is talking about commodity traders releasing food items in their possession. Similar to what happened in Kano State, with the governor appealing to commodity traders and business people to help the government. And the same business people were saying, yes, we are commodity traders, which were suffering. We may be trading in food commodities, but we have forex problems, we have insecurity problems, we have all kinds of challenges. What is government doing to help us? So it's so convenient to say commodity traders should just release food. What are the circumstances of those commodity traders? In typical textbook fashion, the government is also saying, oh, they will release food from the National Grain Reserve. Has anybody visited that National Grain Reserve? What is there, or what we have, and what the quantity is, and how much of it can make any difference? So these are questions, that government officials are not addressing. It is just as well that the House of Representatives, the lawmakers of Nigeria, are calling on government to find a solution to the problem. Because if care is not taken, many of those lawmakers in Abuja, they won't be able to go back to their constituencies. Because they go home, they will go and meet very angry people who will protest, who will ask them why they are feeding fat in Abuja and the people that they are representing have no access to food. One other consideration has been that, okay, the borders that have been closed, food items that have been prevented from being brought into Nigeria. When we are not doing any actual production here that can meet our needs. A bag of rice now is 65,000 naira. Just because we're not producing enough. And yet the Nigerian government says, oh, don't bring in rice from outside. These are questions that the government needs to address. Where President TINUBU is back from a private visit, the little that we saw in the course of that private visit was that he was accompanied by his children, and they were watching football matches. Well, they are welcome back. While the president was away, security challenge in Nigeria got worse. Food insecurity got worse. As the president settles down on his return, and he sits down later this evening to watch the Super Eagles against South Africa, 1700 GMT. We hope there will be cause for joy, but the bigger cause for joy will be for the people of Nigeria to be able to feed, to be able to eat, for their objective of the Constitution under Section 14 2B, which is the security and welfare of the people to be met. So welcome back to work, President TINUBU. There is very serious work. People are hungry.
People are hungry. Welcome back, Mr. President. And Dr. Batu, you said that he should come in and settle, but I doubt very much if he'll be able to settle at all. I think you'd have to come in and hit the ground running. In fact, one would have thought that he would have gone straight from the airport to the office, bearing in mind the situation of things on ground. There's no sleep at all for the president at this time. And he did mention that no one should feel sorry for him, that he was ready for the job. This was during campaign seasons. And so we're holding to that word. And from campaign, they mentioned that he had sleepless nights. He was working 24 hours. I think he's going to have to stretch that time to work even more, because in the 13 days since he's been away from the country, things have gotten bad, well, worse. It would be interesting to find out how things can go so bad in just 13 days. What bad they have gone. The value of the naira, devaluation of the naira, further devaluation of the naira, food insecurity that has been mentioned, hunger in the land, protests here and there, insecurity here and there, killings, kidnappings, ransom, so many things that would be brought to the table of the president. The question would be, which would he tackle first, or which would he, or perhaps have to tackle all of them at once? Well, he has a team of people that he's appointed, and one of the things that the president has often said is his ability to pick the right people to fit the right jobs. And so you would understand why the meeting, this was the first in a series of meetings of the Special Presidential Committee on Intervention, Emergency Food Intervention, chaired by the Chief of Staff, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, where they'd come out following that, where the Minister of Information and National Orientation had spoken about some of the interventions in the immediate that this administration would take to stem the tide of food inflation, hunger, and to feed the people in Nigeria. But The big question is, these announcements, even though it's just one of 3 of the meetings, are they enough? Do they inspire confidence in Nigerians as to whether or not this government has a grasp on the issue of, hunger in the country? Unfortunately, I don't think that the recommendations or perhaps the announcement would do that. A few other things that ought to have been mentioned with regards to, at this moment, it's an emergency. The name of the committee itself is an emergency intervention. Therefore, people, as had been mentioned earlier on, temporarily open the borders, crash the price of food, let people be able to afford to eat. Let's not forget that because of the crisis with the humanitarian ministry, I'm not sure what the status of the conditional cash transfer is. What's the status of that? Because that was meant to be able to help the most vulnerable in Nigeria to be able to afford certain things. If that has been halted because of the situation on ground, then we need to look into that one more time, or perhaps ask about the status of things on that particular conditional cash transfer. The second aspect, of course, is also the area of the talks about minimum wage. These are some of the interventions that this administration has said they were going to put in place as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy and the attendant effect on Nigerians. Unfortunately, despite the very hasty removal of fuel subsidy, even though there was a big case for the importance of doing that at the time, it seemed like the interventions weren't quite as quick or in terms of responding, because we do not want to get to breaking points before we begin to realize that we have a challenge on our hands. I think it's clear for anyone to see that we need to take action, and unfortunately, even though the response has been quite slow, perhaps they would speeden that up. Then finally, I must mention the fact that the Minister of Information and National Orientation had said something. He said that he alleged that some elements were taking advantage of the high food prices and the depreciation of the naira to wreak havoc. I don't think it's elements that are trying to take advantage. It's the people who are protesting because they don't have food to eat. And it's important that in trying to manage the situation through information and communication, that we are also not burying our heads in the sands as to what the real challenges of the people are. It's not good enough to politicize issues like this, especially when it involves the lives and the stomach of Nigerians. What must be done in terms of assurances is action. So we have heard the announcement. How long would it take, or how soon will this come into effect? And to what extent will this impact be? And furthermore, as they continue conversations, because like I mentioned, this is just the first of 3, we're hoping that they will be working tirelessly and, if possible, without even taking a break, to ensure that they come up with something tangible that would have an immediate impact on Nigerians, because it's like a ticking bomb. And anytime, if things are not well handled, there might be an explosion which